Tim O'Brien was born in Austin, Minnesota in 1946. He was born into a loving family, with his father being an insurance salesman and his mother being an elementary school teacher. He has two younger siblings, a brother and a sister. As a kid, O'Brien was generally known to be very lonely. He spent a lot of his time practicing magic. At one point, he contemplated becoming a writer after finding some clippings of his father's writing that was published in the New York Times. The clippings were of his father's personal accounts in World War II. By the time he was ready for college, he no longer wanted to be a writer and wanted to go into political science. He majored in political science at Macalester and wanted to eventually join the State Department to reform its policies. Upon his graduation, O'Brien was drafted into the Vietnam War. He considered deserting to another country since he was against war. Throughout college, he attended peace vigils and war protests, so it was against his morals. Fearing disapproval from his family, friends, and his country, he went to the war and received the classification as an infantryman. While in Vietnam, he hated every minute of it and eventually came home with a Purple Heart, meaning that he was wounded in war. Like his father, O'Brien kept personal reports of his experiences in war, which eventually went to the Minnesota newspapers. After getting published in the newspapers, he decided to expand these reports into a book entitled "If I Die in Combat, Box Me Up and Ship Me Home." He wrote many books, including The Things They Carried. This book was originally intended for an older audience, but made its way into high school and college curriculum, and O'Brien has expressed that he is happy that it is part of curriculum, and here's the interview of him explaining why.
You said that you thought of an audience older than 25 perhaps, yet I watched you with those high school students today, and you said at the end that these were the people that you really wanted to address.
They are.
20 years later, what is it that you hope that they and others take from the book?
To move beyond platitude, to move beyond the mythology we carry about ourselves and our country, to move beyond the sort of the notion, I suppose, that through physical violence we can always accomplish what we want. Sometimes things like wars can do precisely the reverse of what you want with a policy. You can manufacture enemies, as I was telling that class. That a bullet can kill the enemy, but a bullet can also produce an enemy, depending on whom that bullet strikes.
The Vietnam War is the second longest war in U.S. history. The war was meant to keep communist forces from overturning South Vietnam. Nearly 60,000 American lives were lost and many more were injured. In the war, the Communist Party blended with the natives and generally attacked by ambush at night, while American bombing campaigns hit their targets. The bombs failed to push the North Vietnamese communists back, and in January of 1973, Nixon signed a ceasefire that formally ended the hostilities. In 1975, communist forces from the North overran the South and unified the nation. Here is a video taken during the Vietnam War showing some of the people who fought in it.
100 degrees, and the jungle stifles even the tiniest breeze. The going is slow. There could be a North Vietnamese regiment hiding a few yards away, and no one would see it. Nobody talks, so you start thinking. Specialist 4, Dwayne Boer, is thinking he's going to meet his fiancée in Honolulu in 2 weeks, and he will show her the silver star the general pinned on him yesterday. DeValle is the lone medic in the platoon. He's scared from the moment he gets out of the chopper to the moment it picks him up. Scared that someday he's going to get killed picking up a wounded buddy. Jorgensen just became a sergeant, but he doesn't like it. He'd rather be up walking point, where the action is. He's already got 3 Purple Hearts, so everybody calls him Hero.
While tensions were obviously high in Vietnam, they were also extremely high in the United States. Anti-war protests became popular throughout the country. The protests began as small gatherings among peace activists and leftist intellectuals on college campuses, but gained national prominence in 1965 when the U.S. began bombing North Vietnam. Music and poetry were majorly affected by the movement, as everything turned against war and the government and was supporting the end of the war. Here's an example of a song that was popular in this time period and some more pictures of the protests.
Well, come on, all of you big strong men. Uncle Sam needs your help again. Got himself in a terrible jam way down yonder in Vietnam. Put down your books and pick up a gun. We're gonna have a whole lot of fun. And it's 1, 2, 3. What are we fighting for? Don't ask me, I don't give a damn. The next stop is Vietnam. And it's 5, 6, 7. Open up the pearly gates. Well, there ain't no time to wonder why. We're all gonna die.
Coming home from war, veterans expected for people to be excited about some coming home, but instead they came home to the tension of peace protests. Many veterans remember being spit on, yelled at, and getting the middle finger often. This was a hard adjustment for the veterans as they were expecting to come home to a unified country, unlike what they experienced in Vietnam. In a Congress-ordered study, it was found that almost 300,000 Vietnam veterans still struggle with daily health problems linked to the trauma they experienced in war. According to the National Vietnam Veterans Longitudinal Study, roughly 11% of the veterans that participated in this study were in serious danger as they were suffering from extreme PTSD or a condition related to PTSD. Here's a video of a veteran explaining how he feels.
One does not have to learn how to survive in the jungle. Those things is already there. Well, when you're in combat and you're in the jungle, then those instincts come back. They've always been there. The sense of smell, comes back. The hearing comes back. Seems like, sight becomes much more acute. A sixth sense comes in, I cannot see a person over in that direction, but I know that there's a person over there. All of these things just come back.
Another book written about the Vietnam War is Matterhorn by Karl Marlantes, a highly decorated Vietnam veteran. The book is about young people going from boys and being forced to fight their way into manhood. The book is similar to The Things They Carried as it addresses the tension of the war and many problems within the war. A movie that represents the Vietnam War well is We Were Soldiers. It was directed by Randall Wallace and it is about the first major battle in the Vietnam War. It shows both the U.S. and Vietnam fighting and tells the stories of the families waiting for their husbands or fathers to come home. The movie shows a side of the Vietnam War that is not shown enough, which is the families at home not knowing if their father or husband is okay. According to Surrealism.org, Surrealism is a cultural movement and artistic style in which Surrealism style uses visual imagery from the subconscious mind to create art without the intention of logical comprehensibility. An example of Surrealism in a novel is The Hearing Trumpet by Lenora Carrington. The Hearing Trumpet is a feminist holy girl quest and apocalypse novel from the perspective of a 92-year-old woman named Marion, who is sent against her will to an old person's facility. A quote from the book is on the screen. A surrealist movie is Big Man Japan, which was filmed in 2007. Big Man Japan is about a man who periodically transforms into a 100-foot-tall giant when the country gets attacked by similarly sized monsters. The movie is said to be absurd and that people will never forget it once they see it.